Hello and welcome back to Sanvfx. Today I'm back with another tutorial. This time I'm here with an introductory tutorial for Rayfire. So I'll be creating different parts for the tutorial. So today in this part we'll be looking at Rayfire's object here. We'll be looking about dynamic objects and different types of objects in Rayfire and their properties as well. So let's begin. So I'll just load up a scene that I just prepared for the tutorial. So okay, so let me open up a Rayfire floater. So it is just under Geometry tab down here on Rayfire and Rayfire. So you can open up the Rayfire floater. This is where you'll be doing the most of the work. Rayfire floater. Okay. So I'm using the version 1.59. So the previous version might be a little different, but almost everything's are quite similar. Okay. So first of all, in this part we'll be looking at different types of objects in Rayfire. There are basically three types of objects. First one is dynamic impact objects, second one is static and kinematic objects, and the third one is sleeping objects. So let us begin up with dynamic impact objects. Let me unhide my files. Okay, I've got here. Let's open up. Okay, this one, unhide. Okay, I've got this box up here. Okay, so let me add this box to my dynamic impact object list. So I can just select the object and click in add. Okay, then if I want to remove this, I can just do clear. Okay, it removes. Again, add it, and also I can send it to sleeping list from this menu option right here, or interactive selection, and I will be explaining that in when I am in the part about fragmentation. So I'll be doing it at that time. So okay, and also select highlighted, select all, or highlighted. Okay, those are menus. So what is dynamic objects? So dynamic objects are those objects which are simulated by default by Rayfire. So it is default objects which have simulation properties at the beginning. If we just hit the simulation button from the physics option right here, okay, this one's just a preview. Okay, I'll be explaining all of these in later on. Okay, so you can just see that our dynamic object, that was this object, start falling once we started to simulate. So let me just bake the simulation. So now you can see that that's falling right down. Okay, so now if you select the object, you have all the keys right here created by Rayfire. So if you see that the object is falling down continuously, okay, that is because it is added to a dynamic object. And once it is added to a dynamic object, it is affected by gravity and so on. If we have fragmented that object, then it would be separated, it would fall down like similarly. So I can just delete all these keyframes right here. Okay, so now we don't have any more animation again. Okay, so once we have added an object to a dynamic object, that you don't need to interact with it anything. Just once you hit simulation button, it will start falling or whatever it is, moving or whatever like that. Okay, that's what dynamic object is. So most of the time we will be adding our affecting objects to dynamic impact objects. You can also fragment dynamic impact objects from the fragmentation option. So I'll be explaining all of these in later courses, so don't worry. So you can see that I fragmented all the different pieces. So let me hit F4 to turn. Okay, sorry, they are already on. Okay, you can see that we have got several pieces right here. Then you can see all the pieces are now inside our dynamic impact objects. So if you hit fragment impact object again, then all these individual pieces will turn into more pieces according to the settings. Okay, so just let that be for now. Okay, so once you have fragmented it, let's say if you don't want the fragmentation to be, then you can just delete them by from the manager delete. Okay, like that. Okay, so under dynamic impact object we have got simulation geometry. There are four types: box, sphere, convex and concave, and material, heavy metal and different types of material. So every materials have their own properties. The properties are shown below right here. Material preset, you can see each and every individual materials properties like density, friction, bounciness and solidity. So every object or every material type have different types of settings. So whatever you need you can choose according to that. Okay, if you want your dynamic object that's as a glass, then you can choose it as glass, or maybe brick or ice, whatever you like. Okay, so let me put it to dense rock, no problem. And the simulation geometry we have got four types: concave, convex, sphere and box. If you are using a simple box, you can just set it to box. If you are using a sphere as a dynamic object, then you can put it to sphere. But what are convex and concave? So I have another files for that, especially to explain that. Okay, I have this file here, so let me hide this one selection, and also I'll remove it from there. Okay, I have this object in a group, so I will ungroup it. Okay, I have so similar different types of object. Okay, then convex. Okay, I will first add this one to dynamic and this one to static. I'll explain static a little later on. Okay, then we'll do a quick simulation putting it into convex. Okay, hey, so you can see, oops, sorry, let me bake that simulation completely. Okay, you can see that our this object is falling, and without touching this part it has started to interact. So that's what convex is. So it will take as a whole, convex will not take different types of steps and just simulate it according to that. There is some error, it is going little down, but in most of the cases it will just interact from this part right here. Okay, so it will treat an object as a plain box or like plain type of. It won't take different types of steps. So just opposite to the concave. If you set it to concave, then do a simulation, you'll quickly understand what that means. So now look at that. It just interacted at the place only. So it didn't interacted in the air like before when we were using convex. So that's the difference between concave and convex. So, but in newer versions, in most of the cases we keep it as convex, and it works pretty fine. But sometimes you may want to use concave in some cases. But if you have several pieces and you have just collapsed them or grouped them, then just using convex will be fine, because it will apply convex to each and every single pieces. So if you don't understand this right now, if you're confused a little, I'll explain them in a later course when we are doing fragmentation and simulations. So we'll be learning it that time. So for now, just what we need to understand is dynamic objects are those objects which are simulated by default by Rayfire. So if you add an object to dynamic object, then when we hit simulation, that object will move if it is above the grid line, or let's say above our static objects, or like that. Okay, then we'll go to static object now. So what are the static objects in actual? So static objects are those objects which do not move at all, or which are not affected when we simulate. So here you can see that is said static and kinematic. So static are steels, and which are not affected by our object during the simulations, and kinematic objects are animated objects and which are still not affected by any other objects in the simulation. So let me add this floor to a static object. Okay, and let me hide this as well again, and then again unhide. I want to unhide my dynamic object, unhide. Okay, then I'll add this to my dynamic object, and then let me do a simulation. Now you can see that our box interacts with this static object, but that static object does not move at all. Okay, so it just acts as a block or something like that, as a floor. You can use the box as a floor so that any objects falling from up will interact with the static objects. Okay, so similarly for static objects as well, you have got simulation geometry, convex, concave, and material types as well. Okay, and next one we have sleeping objects. So sleeping objects, also known as inactive objects in previous versions. So sleeping objects are those objects which are only active once it is made active. That means during simulations, sleeping objects only move once they are hit by some objects or by any kind of forces. So let me unhide. Okay, let me unhide this one right now. Okay, also let me unhide my sphere. Okay, and I'll hide this one. Okay, so I have got this sphere animated, so I want this to break through my wall. Okay, and also I'll unhide this one as well, and for now I will be using my home grid as a ground. So enabling this option makes our grid as a floor plane, so any objects falling down will not go below this grid line. Home grid as ground. Okay, then I'll just add, okay, let me clear this one, and I'll just add all these objects to dynamic impact list, and then this one to static objects. Okay, then let me do a simulation. Okay, so it's a little slow, but you can see that our object is falling before the sphere hits, and as the sphere hits, it falls down. Okay, let me pause it right down. So if you had noticed that before this sphere hit our fragments, they had started to fall down. So as we have added all of them to our dynamic objects, they start acting as soon as the simulation starts. So what if we, okay, let me again add it to, okay, and we can just send it to sleeping list from here as well, sleeping objects. Okay, then what will happen if we simulate now? You'll notice that they won't simulate, or they don't start moving until and unless any object hits it. That's what is sleeping objects. It gets activate only after hitting by some kind of force or some kind of objects. That's the difference between sleeping and dynamic objects. Dynamic objects starts to simulate as soon as we hit the simulation button, but sleeping objects only starts reacting once it is hit by some objects or some kind of force. Okay, similarly it also have all the simulation geometries similar to dynamic and static objects, and also materials as well. The additional option that we can find in sleeping objects, which we do not have in dynamic and static objects, is dead objects. So what is this? Let me turn on dead object and put the revival velocity to about 10. Then I'll just do a simulation and I'll explain it what that means. Okay. You can see that. Wait for a while. So what's the difference that you can see in the simulation before turning dead object and after turning dead object? I think you must have seen the difference. So only a certain part is affected by our sphere, but before all the parts were falling down, but now just certain area is affected by our sphere. So that is determined by revival velocity. So it calculates the velocity of our sphere and then defines certain area of affection. Let's see, by increasing this revive velocity to 100, and then okay, I'll just delete this and I'll select all these objects. Oops, sorry, I think I did something very wrong. Okay, select all these objects and delete all these keyframes so we don't have any animation. Okay, and then go to physics. We have revive velocity 100 and simulate. Now you will see that only a small area will be affected. So just a small area is affected. So that's what their object is. Under sleeping objects, they are only activated by heating, and when we turn on their object, not all the objects get affected once it is hit by any object. Only the certain part will be affected. We can see right here. So if you are creating something like bullet hitting through a wall or something like that, the bullet does not break each and every part of our wall. So just a certain part as per our velocity of our moving object or any kind of force. That's what is dead objects. So less the revive velocity, you will have more affection area. Let me put it to 1, and then I can select all these objects and delete these keyframes and do another simulation. Now we'll have a larger area that will be affected by our sphere. So you can see that even all these pieces are falling down. So if you want this certain area to affect by our objects, then you can turn on their objects in sleeping objects list. Okay, so let me stop the simulation right here. Okay, so that is sleeping object. And so next thing we have here is a material preset. So that's all the properties of different types of materials that we can find up here and in static objects and dynamic objects as well. So you can see heavy metal, it has got higher solidity and higher density. Okay, solidity refers to the how will the breaking affect these objects. Let's say that metal does not break so easily. Similarly, light metal, it can break quite a little easier than heavy metal. And similarly for glass and ice, it will be quite low because they will break even in with a small pressure as well. For rubber, it is at about 100 because rubber does not break at all. So that was its solidity. You can also find material solidity, I think in fragmentation. Oh no, it's on physics maybe. Okay, material solidity at demolished geometry. I'll explain that later on in next part of tutorial. Okay, so today this is what I think will be fine for today. So we learned today 3 different types of objects. So dynamic, static, and sleeping objects. So these things is really necessary to know what they are before doing any kind of simulations, so that we can get perfect result whatever we like. And this dead object feature, it's very good and it's really important to know. So now I guess I'll be stopping the part 1 for right now, and then in the next part we'll go through fragmentations, properties in Rayfire, and then we'll move to physics and other. This layers is not too important, but still I'll try to explain what that is in later on. And next one we'll be going through fragmentation in another part. And one more thing to say, I have been receiving a few requests for tutorials, and also this basic Rayfire is also from a tutorial request. I'll be going line by line for the first one I'll be creating at first. So this one was the first request I received, so I'm just creating this tutorial. I also received a few more requests on Sanvfx and so on, so I'll definitely be creating tutorials on them as well, but it will take some time. I've been working on some projects as well. So thank you guys for supporting me, and also for your tutorial request. You can send me more tutorial requests. I'll try my best to create tutorials on your request. So you can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and soon I'll be also adding a link of my LinkedIn ID or something. I just don't know the exact pronunciation. I just found about it today only. So I'll be signing up there also, and I'll be providing the link for that as well. So you can now follow me in Facebook and Twitter from the link in the description below. So that's it. Hope this has helped you guys a lot. We'll see you in next part. Have a great day, and don't forget to subscribe and hit like. Thank you very much.